One of the things that happens sometimes is people show up with a very specific objective, right? I've got pain, and I want to eliminate the pain, for instance. Okay? Maybe you can relate to this one. I've got this ongoing edema that I want to get rid of, or it could be anything. There's a specific thing that someone's focused on, and that's what they want to try to affect. And sometimes what happens is they get the result that they were hoping for, and maybe they're only 1 or 2 or 3 weeks into their fast, less than the way they were scheduled for. And they'll say, I want to break my fast because I've already accomplished what I came to do. Okay? This happens sometimes. And so I thought I'd share with you a little story about this. This very situation, and I hope it will help you if you find yourself in a similar position. So several years ago, probably 10 years ago now, we had a deaf woman. In fact, we've had a lot of deaf clients. Unusual because I think it happened because we were located right outside of Washington, D.C., and Washington, D.C. houses the U.S.'s only deaf university. And the deaf is a very tight-knit community. Okay? Nowadays, everyone's got a smartphone. Deaf people can communicate with anyone pretty easily, right? But think about how it was 20 years ago or more. 10 years ago. Most people didn't have a smartphone. And in order to communicate, I would have guessed it would have been harder, perhaps, to be blind, like more of a disability. And anyone know who Oliver Sacks is? English neuroscientist. He says being deaf is far more difficult. And again, this has changed, I'm sure, with technology. But he said at the time he wrote about this probably 20 years ago, he said it's far more difficult to be deaf because blind people can still communicate with everybody. They can hear and speak. How do you communicate with a deaf person if you don't know sign language and they can't hear you or read your lips? Right? It's difficult. Now today, again, with texting and emails, you can communicate with pretty much anyone. So because we had a lot of deaf clients, we did deaf retreats. We had a couple of them. And we had a deaf retreat. It was a 1-week retreat, with food and events, etc. And then several, I think 4 or 5 of the participants stayed to fast afterward. We planned it for just before we opened. And then several women stayed to fast. And all of them, except one, they were all there for 4 weeks, 21-day fast, except one. There was one woman who had multiple sclerosis. She'd been diagnosed with MS. She was fortunate because it was pretty mild. The MS had progressed in her case to the point where she had some mental confusion. She wasn't very clear, but physically she was fine. And I don't have a ton of experience with MS. We've probably fasted 15 people with MS over the years, 18 maybe. All the rest had physical issues and mostly lower body issues. She was perfectly fine in her body. But she was a college professor, and she was an extraordinary woman. Most of us learned to speak because we could hear. We could mimic the sounds that our parents and other people were saying, right? This is a woman who never heard anything and taught herself to speak well enough that she could lecture to a college class of hearing students. She could read lips so well. She taught a class in a lecture hall. Mm-hmm. Those big halls where there's like hundreds of kids? She could read lips from a distance. It was amazing. And she was teaching English or history or something. But she was forced to take early retirement in her 50s because she was becoming confused and unable to do her job. And I had said to her, at least 26 days, 26 to 30 days typically with MS. This is what we've seen the best results with. So she agreed to spend 5 weeks with us and fast for 26 days. On the 21st day, she came to me and said, I'm going to break my fast tomorrow and leave next Saturday with everybody else, with all my deaf friends. I said, why would you do that? And she said, because I'm clearer than I've been for years. I got the result that I came for. And I said, I see. And she said, and all my friends are leaving. And again, she could actually communicate better than most of the deaf people with other people, but she assumed that the hearing clients wouldn't want to interact with her because it was more work, right? It was, you had to sort of listen sometimes to understand, and you had to make sure you were looking at her directly and speaking clearly so she could read your lips. And she figured, now she never tested this theory because the first 21 days, she'd been with 4 other deaf women, and they stayed to themselves, right? They never really communicated with anybody else. And she said, all my friends are leaving, I'm going to be lonely, I miss my husband, and I've got the results I came for. And I attempted to explain to her that the fact that she felt better didn't mean she was completely healed. So in English, there's a saying about the straw that breaks the camel's back. Is everyone familiar with that? The idea is very simple. You have a camel, right? They use camels to carry stuff. You put a piece of straw in the camel. The camel can't even feel that, right? A second piece. A piece of straw weighs nothing. But if you keep adding up pieces of straw, eventually it gets heavier and heavier, becomes a load. And there's one piece of straw, it's the straw, the camel collapses, can no longer carry the load. So when I was a kid, there was a game. It was a little toy where you had to put straws on this little plastic camel's back. Anyone remember this? No? And you lose if you're the one that makes the camel collapse. Now, when you take that straw off, guess what happens? It pops back up. Okay? So what I said to her was, look, you're the camel, right? We've been taking straws off your back, detoxifying. And now everything's good. But theoretically, how many straws away from recollapsing might you be? Anyone?
1.
Could be just one straw. Could we put one straw back on and there it is again? Okay? So eliminating your symptoms doesn't mean you've done everything you need to do. Fasting is about dealing with the underlying issues, allowing the body to actually cleanse and heal itself. Okay? Symptoms may disappear before everything is completely done, right? So I said to her, no, please, it's not long enough, right? I'd had enough experience with MS. It's not long enough. Even though you feel great, keep going. Couldn't convince her. She ate the next day. She went home the next week. 3 months later, she sent me an email. And she said, now I understand what you were talking about. She made a couple of less than optimal choices. And what happened? Symptoms came back. Okay? You don't want to put yourself, one compromise away from recreating the condition that brought you in the first place. Give your body the chance to do everything it can. Okay? So, she came back a year later, completed a longer fast. I haven't heard from her now for a couple years, but my mother happened to be there during the retreat, and they became friends. My mother told me the last she heard from her, it's now been 10 years, completely symptom-free. Okay? Give your body the chance to actually heal, and then don't recreate the problem. You could be healed forever. All right? But don't give your body the chance it needs, and you might, unfortunately, see the exact same things come back again. Hi, enjoying my videos? If you'd like to learn much more, check out the Academy for Vibrant Living, where our Vibrant Health course will teach you everything you need to know to take your health to an amazing new level. And if you'd like to turn your passion for health into a lucrative career, check out the health coaching course where you can become a professional certified health coach and help as many people as possible see amazing results.